Right, let's get started. So first I want to switch so you can actually see my presentation. That would be useful. There we go. So I want to welcome everybody to the presentation, Under Construction, Crafting Fortnite's Building System. First thing I want to say right off the bat is thank you very much for being here. My first GDC, and I've discovered there's so many amazing talks to go to, so really humbled and appreciative that you decided to come to mine of all of the options that you have. A little bit about me. My name is Billy Bramer. I am a gameplay programmer at Epic Games. I got my start at Midway in Chicago before they unfortunately went under. I moved on to another small independent studio in Chicago, in Phosphor Games. Was there for a while, and now happily employed at Epic. While at Epic, I've worked on the Unreal Engine, helped work on editor bugs, fixes, new features, helped ship Gears of War 3 and its subsequent DLCs, as well as worked on internal projects like Infinity Blade 2 and so on. Currently working on our next title, known as Fortnite, which is the reason we're here today. If you're not familiar with Fortnite, it is Epic's next game. It's our first internally developed Unreal Engine 4 game, so we're really excited about it. It's a co-op action survival hybrid with a very large emphasis on allowing the player to build gigantic fortresses and buildings of their own design. That's primarily what I've been working on, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I know it's a little unorthodox because the game actually is not released yet. It's still in development. But what I want to show you today is kind of an iterative snapshot of where this feature has gone along the way, where we started, where we're going towards, what we have right now, because there are lessons that we've learned along the way that are still valuable to be shared, even though the game itself is not shipped yet. So the caveat that I have to give you up front is that everything you're going to see today that I'm going to show you is work in progress or prototype, and it was filmed by me, a programmer. So somewhere there's an artist in our studio cringing really bad right now because they're not going to like the quality of videos that I take, but that's okay. So overview, we're going to start with laying the foundation. We're going to go into the basics of the systems, the goals, where we went. We're going to go brick by brick. Next couple iterative little things we went on. At this point, I'm regretting coming up with clever names for each of these subtitles. Not as clear as they could be, but you know what you're going to do. Stress fracture, we're going to discuss issues that came up along the development and problems that we continue to deal with. We're going to look at major renovations, a big sweeping change that we made to try to address these problems. And then we're going to go into house cleaning, take a look at where we are right now and where things might be going in the future. All right, so starting laying the foundation. The big goal that we wanted to support with Fortnite's building system right off the bat is that it had to be creative enough that players could build these crazy castles of their dreams and not be restricted. It had to have the depth and variety that they wanted so they could have their crazy stairs and their balconies and their doorways. But at the same time, it had to be fast and robust enough to perform under combat and action scenarios. Players need to be able to defend themselves in a hurry. And so you can't spend a lot of time clunking around like, I want to build this creative thing. You need to also be able to respond in a real big hurry if these guys show up and start punching your base around. So with that in mind, the very first thing we had to decide was what was the granularity of the pieces that we were going to give players to build with. Now obviously the larger granularity as you move more towards a bigger building, you increase construction speed. You can throw down a whole base really fast if I give you a giant big block like that. It's like a whole little hut. And as you go in the other direction, you increase creative freedom. And so for us, we kind of picked a middle ground. We thought it would be a good balance. We broke it down into component parts of what you think of as a building, such as walls or floors or roofs or stairs. For us, we feel that that is a good balance between the speed and creativity without losing too much in either direction. It also offers us a lot of visual flexibility. If we had picked a smaller granularity piece, we might not be able to do as many cool like boards building up as this is being constructed, or it's taking damage and things are blasting off. And in fact, if you're interested in that, my colleague John Lindquist will be giving an artistic focus talk tomorrow about the shaders and all of the crazy magician tricks that our artists do to make the building system look the way it does. So I encourage you to check that out too if you're further interested. Also, it naturally resonates. You can talk to anyone whether they play games or not, and they know what a wall is. They know what a roof is. They know what stairs are. It just comes right across. You don't have to explain it. Additionally, players who, they're just starting and they don't want to get too in-depth, you can just give them a plain wall. They don't need to know about the variance that has a window and an archway and all these crazy things. They can just analyze it from the wall level and be fine. And so the two challenges that we faced immediately upon making this selection, which sounds simple but have proven to be the two challenges that persist throughout the entire development of the system, are how the user selects the piece that they want, and then when they've made that selection, how they place that piece. Whoops. And so They both sound very simple, but as you'll see in the examples, these are things that we have struggled with and come up with solutions for throughout the entire process. So there's a lot going on here. This is our initial prototype of the game. And so try to explain it piece by piece, but the first thing we're looking at is the type of piece that the user is selecting is being contextually chosen based on the viewing angle of their camera. As they look down, they're being presented with options for where to build a floor. As they look straight ahead, they're being presented with options on how to build a wall. Within that, the user can scroll a mouse wheel and select subvariants of a piece. So for instance, you saw as the wall was going by, they got a wall with like a little barricade window in the middle, wall with double windows, wall with doors. And then at this point, when they decide like, okay, I want this wall, they left click, they get a blueprint outline of kind of what they want to build. And at which point now, if they walk up and melee on it, it will begin building up and completing the construction in a contextual manner. Likewise, if a wall is already completed, a user can walk up and start meleeing on it, and then it begins to destroy it. We've also got a little bit of a, you can see right there at the tail end, kind of a little building mini game going on with like a little meter going by, and you can click on it and try to speed up your building. At this point in development, it was actually not fully functional, but we polished it, got it taken along. If you're a fan of Gears of War, I like to call this applying all the lessons learned from Gears of War, add active reload to everything. And, and so we'll get into that a little bit later. But as you can see, initial prototype kind of proves out the concept. We really liked where it was going building-wise. But this is something that's kind of obvious. But guessing user intention is hard. You're gonna be like, well, duh, Billy, I know. But we really thought that if we could just automate this so we could choose your piece based on the floor or the wall without you having to think about it, that it would be a great win. But in retrospect, playing in the playtest, people absolutely despised it because it wasn't long in playing that people would look down on the floor and they would want to be able to build a wall but a story beneath them. They didn't want the floor. That was completely confusing to them. I was looking at a wall and now you're presenting me a floor. What is going on? Perhaps even more damning was the melee system to build and break things. What would happen is a user would be in the process of building up their wall, they would complete it, and then they would just keep on clicking because they're in the middle of clicking, and now the wall is being broken down right in front of them right after they finished it. Or even worse, they're near a building that's partially constructed, a monster attacks them, and they're like, I'm gonna swing, oh, now I'm building a wall. And then they get attacked and die, and then they yell at me. And so that wasn't going very well. We had to good foundation, but obviously work had to be done. So brick by brick, let's take a look at some ideas we came up with on how we might solve these problems. So we kind of knew we were going to have a quick bar at some point. We wanted a way to store items, things like that. So this is a very early shot of a quick bar that we put in, and we want to focus on that right now because we came up with the idea of what if we gave the user an explicit control on the quick bar that they could press a button and switch it over, and then whoops, oh my goodness, spoilers. Then you would see the building pieces on your quick bar by explicitly going into this mode, because now there's no more confusion over contextual, I looked down and got a floor. You picked the floor yourself right off this quick bar. Now, as you can probably guess, there were tons of problems with this too. Even with this glorious programmer art removed, when we put in real icons, it was definitely easier to pick what you wanted, but you still had to sit there and scan, because when you get to the level of like, here's a wall, but it has a window over here and a door over here, that's still not very easy to convey, even with like really nice made artist icons. So they would have to sit there and like look through their quick bar, and it really wasn't very fast. Additionally, this is obviously space limited. At the time we did this, we already had more than 9 variants for walls. So this was not going to be a long-term sustainable solution, but we thought it would be a good step in the middle. The thing that we did not anticipate is that hard mode switches, particularly on UI like this, are so tricky for the user to recover from. We figured because you had to press a button explicitly, I think it was the B key, to switch this quick bar, that you would intrinsically know to get back out, you would press the same button. People didn't make that connection. Even if we shouted at you on the UI, it didn't matter. We would put it and people would forget. As soon as a trivial amount of pressure was applied to any user, a monster comes up and starts fighting them, they just start frantically clicking. They don't look at that quick bar. They don't know what's going on. And so we would be in playtest, a monster would come up, people would just start clicking, and walls are going up all over the place as they're dying over and over again. So that wasn't going to do it either. So we have this great idea. We're like, okay, that's not working out for us, but also, maybe more importantly, that melee issue is still really a thorn in our side. And we had all these melee weapons. We're like, wait a minute. what if we take our melee weapons and split them in half? We'll categorize them. So we'll have pure melee weapons that can only do damage and damage enemies, and we'll have pure building tools that can only build things. And then if you select a building tool, then it shows you the shapes on the quick bar. What could possibly be more clear? We were good on this one, right? We thought this is it. Turns out probably the stupidest thing we've done in the entire development of the system. So as you look at it, you can probably tell there's not a huge difference between what is a sledgehammer versus what is a hammer. And nobody really knew that in the game either. We changed icons. We did all kinds of crazy things. People didn't understand. To them, a hammer is a hammer, and it makes perfect sense that if a monster attacks me and I have a hammer in my hand, I am going to hit you with it. And so visual cues are so vital for the perception of a feature. It did not matter what we did to that hammer. I shrunk the scale of that hammer to Fisher-Price size. No one cared. They still wanted to swing it. I would still go to playtest, and I walked into one playtest to hear, "It's a hammer, damn it! I should be able to hit it." And I just turned around. I just walked right back out the door. Like, all right. So still not really solving it for us, still having problems. And so now, while those problems are existing, of course, there are sneaky other problems happening in the background. Because the thing is, that was enough to prove the concept. People were invested in the system. They wanted more depth, so they started dreaming about what might come down the road. And so, while we're trying to solve just placing a wall without infuriating people, people are like, man, archways would be cool, and balconies, and stairs that turn around, and roofs, and braces, and what if I could put up castle barricades? And like, oh, okay, well, we don't have anything that can service that. And in fact, now these other pieces that people are inventing are causing other problems we didn't even have. For instance, it's pretty easy to put a wall in front of you, but this balcony now, like, how do you orient this in 3D space? It can be mirrored and rotated and all over the place, and it's really easy for a user to understand putting a wall in front of them, but now when they have to start doing 3D math rotations to make the balcony look good, they don't get very happy. And so now we're just running into all of these issues, and then they're like, wait, what if we have upgrades? What if we could convert between materials? Like, okay, we'll keep that in mind too. And so we're getting to this point where all these issues are accumulating, and we're coming up with gray box ideas on how to solve it, and this is an actual gray box for what the UI in this game might have looked like at one point. And we realize we're kind of making Excel, like we're building spreadsheets. This isn't very fun. Like at the top, we had all of these different filters, like, oh, I got to filter by the type. And then there were scrolling pages. And then on top of that, there were so many different variants, it didn't matter. You had to drag them to the quick bar. And so like this just wasn't going to work. We were in a bad way. Additionally, while all these ideas are going on, implementation is lagging behind. We can't keep up with all of the suggestions for UI and all these variations we want. So as a quick aside, a neat trick that we learned is we needed a prototype. We tried it in PowerPoint. Now, a lot of people, like, you know, obviously prototyping UI is not a new thing, and maybe even doing a PowerPoint isn't that new of an idea either, but it was for us. We tried it out. And so the UI artist and I worked together on like this radial mock-up of what it might look like if your piece was selected off a radial menu. And all of this was done in PowerPoint, and all of it was done in under an hour. People don't really realize that PowerPoint has all these like really powerful features. We could jump around between slides and make click zones and all these things. So we were able to mock out like how ridiculously tedious this proposed UI was going to be just to upgrade a wall. And we put it in front of people. It took 5 seconds and they're like, you're right, that is terrible. And the alternative would have been implementing that over a course of a week or two and wasting a lot of time to discover the same thing. So if you ever need a prototype UI, you may want to consider PowerPoint. So major renovations. So numerous issues still outstanding. Still haven't solved everything. And we decided, let's just refocus on the core pieces. If there were no variants, if we only had the 4 base pieces that people wanted, the stairs, the roofs, the walls, the floors, and we put them on the quick bar, and that was all you were allowed to do in our game, would the game function finally? Yes. We're like, all right. So we will take those 4, and we'll try to build from there. How are we going to get back to the variants now? Could we go back to that UI that we had and now like pre-filter it so we could get rid of that top part? Like, no, that's still kind of Excel. And so we're like, okay, let's just look at the core wall itself. What if we were able to change its granularity temporarily? What if the user was able to break it into smaller pieces and alter it that way? We kept thinking like, okay, what if it's like an architect's grid? You look at the wall like this and you decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to punch this out and I'm going to punch this out and then I'm going to confirm my selection and now there's a door there. Like, oh, all right, this actually might work. Does it work for the other variant pieces for walls? Well, all right, so we'll fill those back in. We'll click here. Now there's a window. Yes, we're liking this for walls. But in order for this to work, it's got to work for all those other pieces too that we have to solve. So we move on to floors. Does it translate to floors? Actually, it does. The floors can work pretty much the exact same way. You carve out this little piece. There's the balcony everybody loved. But the important thing is that we discovered almost on accident, I wish I could take credit for this. Now, if you carve that piece out, it's the same balcony, but it's oriented in 3D space for the user automatically. They didn't even think about it. And so precise user automation is invaluable. This is the counter towards guessing what they wanted. Now we can do exactly what they want without them even thinking about it. And so for floors, now we're really psyched because this is working for floors too. So we move on to stairs and roofs, which are obviously the more complex pieces. And we're looking at it, and we're trying to brainstorm how we're going to make this work. And we're like, okay, well, you can't just cut pieces out because roofs, they change elevation. And so the initial idea was manipulating vertices and edges, and we're like, okay, so now we went from Excel, now we're making 3ds Max, right? Like that's not going to work either. Like no one's going to want to play that. And so had to go back to the drawing board. All right, let's look just at roofs. Is there a way we can get roofs into a binary state also? And we kind of played around with it, and we realized, yeah, we could. Instead of cutting the pieces out, what if clicking on it just changes their elevation? So these pieces were up in the air. I click there, it goes down. Now I get a curved edge roof piece. Like, all right, that actually worked too. We like that. But now we got to solve stairs. Stairs are going to be the tricky one because we could have done the elevation change thing too, but we had those stairs that double back. We would have needed like a trinary state of heights. Most of the things you entered would have been wrong. They wouldn't have actually yielded real stairs. You would have been angry. So then we started coming up with other crazy ideas. What if we projected this thing that we had in 3D space and made you manipulate a cube? And like, no, like way too complex. Then we said, okay, what if we had the same thing, but these like start and end things were like widgets in the world that you like could click and drag, and you could be like, I want to drag this over here, and now my stairs end there, and so I get this cool direction. And we liked it, but at the end of the day, now you're like dragging 3D widgets in space, and you're kind of like making a level editor, which we know how to do, but that is not really what we're going for in a game here. So we liked the idea, though, of focusing on the direction of the stairs, and we said, what if we could just draw on the stairs? What if we just had our piece and kind of just draw the general direction you wanted using the same thing? So would that get us to our crazy double back stairs? For instance, users dragging back. Yeah, now they have their stairs. And so the big takeaway for us in developing this particular system is that mechanical and visual consistency across all these different modes really softens what is a pretty complex interaction in 3D space that the user is performing. So we introduce people to building walls first, and they get it. Like they just pop out things, and then they're like, oh, wow, a door showed up. Because the visuals look the same on all 4 of these modes, people then start experimenting in the other ones. They're not as afraid. So the stairs are complex, but they'll get there, and they'll be like, oh, I've seen this before. And it doesn't behave quite the same, but they'll drag and play around it, and they understand. And it's all because we tried to make the visuals as concise and uniform as possible. We were able to do that. So from there, we were pretty happy with that going forward. Kind of start cleaning up some other things. And we get to the point where, okay, melee is still not solved. Like the contextual melee thing is still going to be an issue. What if we just let the buildings build themselves? You put them down, they start building up. The thing is, this wasn't a new idea. Like this had been proposed probably 5 or 6 times. And we always came up with a reason to shoot it down, and it was always somebody else. Like, how does that fit in the lore? Buildings that build themselves? Come on. I mean, like, or then it was like, well, but it's a building game, and if you're not building, how invested are you going to be in your building? It's a building game, right? And so, we had all those kind of things. And we just kept shooting it down over and over, and we were like, you know what? Forget it. We're just going to try it. We're going to see what happens. And we tried it, and we loved it. It just solved the melee issue right away. But the thing that was important too is to get there, we also had to remove that mini game. And as much as we like active reload, and that broke some hearts, we had to get it out of there in the name of progress. And that was actually a big step too. So the 2 big things on this was, it's really important to revisit discarded ideas. Like we had discarded auto building so many times, it's not even funny. And the answer was right there in front of our face when we finally tried it. And the mini game at the time was probably one of the most polished aspects of the entire game. But we had to throw it away in the name of progress. Then we decided to do contextual operations via overlap. So people wanted to be able to do upgrades, right? And we're like, okay, we have this cool system where you place the wall. What if you place another wall on top of it and it just does the upgrade or handles all these other things? So damaged wall, put a wall on it, boom, repaired. What if we do wall and you put another wall on it, boom, level 2 wall. And then Well, what happened is we were riding this high of like how cool this was. We did this in World UI, and then we did this in World UI, and it just confused everyone because there's giant icons everywhere. So you'd look, everywhere you'd look, they'd be like, hey, you can repair this. Oh, look, you can upgrade this one. Oh, you can convert this one because you have a different material type. Oh, there's an obstacle in the way. And it just completely confused everyone. Nobody understood anything that was going on, even though we thought we were being really helpful and giving you all kinds of cool information. And so the thing there is it's pretty easy to overdo it with the in-world UI. Once you get on a roll and you really like it, then it's pretty easy to go too far down the tracks. And in addition, while people loved the initial mechanic of placing walls, having to effectively rebuild your whole base by placing another wall and targeting it right on top of the same thing didn't really play well. People didn't like that. So we eventually kind of transitioned to this contextually available always on a key. When you walk by, you get these little prompts and you can do upgrade and edit and things like that. And so I want to show you real quick, this is a video of kind of like the current state. This is a user pre-editing the pieces before they place them, deciding. And so you can see the walls, like the user can also click and hold and just drag, and we like let you paint right across it to do it really fast. And you can just see that they're cycling through a ton of different shapes in a hurry that all would be valid that they could put down. Popped in windows, chopping out the bottom so they can make an archway. And then moving on to the floors, you can see like we already have like a pre-existing balcony thing here. The user is able to very quickly match the balcony and do kind of whatever they want, transitioning it to like a straightaway, curving around that way. I want a diagonal balcony, why not? That's my personal favorite piece in the whole game. But here's roofs. You can change the elevation. You can see the tiles going up and down as the user clicks on them. There's a diagonal roof. And then stairs, finally, we put in some like little helper arrows too that always guide you towards the direct way, the valid ways to drag to help people out. But you can see they're able to make half-size stairs and full stairs, stairs that are changing directions right in front of their face as they edit it, stairs that cycle back on them. And then for the totally awkward cut of here's what people can make with the game. Yay! And so, kind of wrapping up, the thing for us is when you think about like Fortnite's evolution and the iteration on this, it was really easy for me to initially think of this as like we're building this castle brick by brick and wall by wall, and we're going to get this huge glorious castle and raise the flag of fun, and it is going to be awesome. But as it turns out, it wasn't quite that straightforward. There was a lot of cycling back and breaking things and unbreaking things and revisiting discarded ideas. And it wasn't just this continual polish in a straightforward direction. And so we ended up with a different looking castle, maybe not the one we exactly expected, but the fun flag is still there. And the great thing about the project, still in development, and we're still working on this iteration process. So by the time you get to play with this castle, I'm sure it will look a little different too. But that's kind of where we are with that. And so I think I only have like 2.5 minutes, but if you guys have any questions, I would be glad to try to answer them. This is my first GDC, and I will be executed if I go off the topic of this message, so please try to keep it on the topic of the presentation if you have any questions. Amy? Uh-oh.
Have you decided on a final implementation for your upgrade system?
Okay, the question is, have we decided on a final implementation for the upgrade system? I would say no. We will say that at this point nothing is final, right? But in playtesting, the contextually bound to one key as you run by is actually pretty fun, and people are enjoying it. You can just like breeze by your whole base and just hit the key and like blah, 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 and like watch it all upgrade. And so we're happy with that, but I wouldn't say that it's definitely final. Anything could change. There you go. All right, well, thank you again very much for coming. I think you guys will get evaluation form emails. Make sure you keep track of those. Thank you.